Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. I'm Amanda,
I'm Laura.
And I'm Kendra.
and today is part 2 of our Losing Strategies series. And without further ado, here's Laura.
So, if you didn't hear our first episode, I just want to introduce you briefly to Terry Real. He is a therapist, brilliant therapist. He lives in Boston. He's been in practice for 40 years, and he's the guy you go to when you're about to get divorced. You've already been through therapy or not, and you go in deciding we're going to get divorced or not. And he has a really good success rate with breaking through some very, very difficult and persistent negative patterns in relationships. He's the author of several books, including I Don't Want to Talk About It, which was the first book and maybe the only, I don't know, I haven't heard of another book on men's depression, and Us, which is the subtitle is, I think, Getting Past You and Me to Us. And he's just incredible. And Dr. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife, she has a PhD in counseling psychology. She has a practice in Chicago and makes many podcast appearances. She is also brilliant and very well versed and articulate in helping people see their own ways that they contribute negatively to relationships. We are all convinced that it's completely our partner's fault when we're not experiencing marital bliss. And yet the only thing we have control over is ourselves. And so she is fantastic in teaching what she calls self-authorship, where we learn how to really take responsibility for our own lives and happiness and improve our relationships in the process. So we're talking about the second set of losing strategies that these two brilliant minds have brought to us. Our first episode, we talked about the first 5, and keep in mind there are a million, and these are just 10 of them. And these are not for us to identify them in our partners. These are for us to identify in ourselves. We don't have control over them. I'd say it is definitely a losing strategy. That's control. Trying to change our partner is not going to help us. So these are for our benefit to look at and examine our own lives and see how we are showing up in these ways. So losing strategy number 6 is playing the victim. And this feels good a lot of times. We feel like, oh, we're unhappy, but like there's nothing we can do about it. This is something that contributes a lot to burnout. And we can play the victim in the medical system, honestly. And not to say that the medical system is good and whole and performing as it should. It is definitely not. However, playing the victim is not going to help us feel good or happy. And in relationships, this looks like taking on this victim position to deflect responsibility or gain sympathy. And it doesn't mean that the other person's behavior is good and fair and appropriate, but viewing ourselves as a victim rather than as a strong person who is able to manage themselves and create a life for themselves that they want, whether with this partner or without, it really disempowers us and perpetuates negative patterns. So when we take on this victim role, it can create a power imbalance or exacerbate one that's already present. And in a healthy, intimate relationship, we are same as. There's no power struggle. There's no power imbalance. You both view each other as equal, worthy, whole human beings, worthy of respect and love. And you love being together. It's all about ease and freedom and feeling good about being with that person. So when we play a victim, then we're saying that that person has power over us and that we don't have control over our own lives. And that can prevent growth and accountability. It can prevent growth in ourselves and also prevent growth in the other person. If we're just accepting, this is just the way it is, they are just this way and I have to deal with it or I have to get divorced. It doesn't see the other person as same as someone who is capable of growth and doesn't give them the benefit of the doubt that they could respond to invitations for growth in a positive way. So it's not what we want to do. So when we own our own part in relationship dynamics and step out of victimhood, that's where we start to be free. And what that looks like is, here's an example. And again, these are AI generated. They are not anybody you know or anybody we know. Here's an example. Lisa constantly tells her partner, Tom, how difficult her life is and how no one understands her struggles. She often deflects responsibility for issues in the relationship by portraying herself as helpless and overwhelmed, expecting Tom to always take care of her needs. So the impact, as you could imagine, would be that Tom feels emotionally drained and resentful because Lisa never takes responsibility for her role in the relationship issues. This dynamic creates imbalance and emotional exhaustion. And blaming is a separate losing strategy that we're going to address next. But when we're not taking responsibility for ourselves, when we're saying that the world is inflicting itself upon us or our partners inflicting themselves upon us, then we're just totally disempowering ourselves. If I were to tell someone who was in a victim mentality that that was what was going on, they might become defensive, as we do. And we see this. We see this not usually with our clients one-on-one. Actually, I don't think I've ever seen that with client one-on-one. But for instance, if we have a social media post talking about how there's things that we doctors can do for ourselves to help us feel better, you will see people respond to that with defensiveness and say, it's not us, it's the system. And yes, the system is dysfunctional. And we too are also sometimes dysfunctional if we don't understand how we are creating things in our lives and in our thought patterns that are actually making the situation worse. That's being defensive. And Dr. Finlayson-Fife, I thought this was just a brilliant quote that she said. She says on defensiveness, every time you defend yourself or minimize some way in which you've hurt your spouse, you are telling them that you are not trustworthy, that your ego matters more to you than the truth. I was like, whoa, that's a lot to take in, right? When you're defensive or dismissive, you are trying to prove through deception that you are better than you are. This does not work. And like, well, what do you do when someone is criticizing you if you're not going to defend? You say, this is where having a good boundary, like a personal boundary where you can hear people's commentary of you and decide whether or not you want to accept it and whether it's true. You can find the truth in it and allow it in and then keep the rest out. You don't have to tell them that they're wrong or, well, I did this because this way. Instead, you can take a minute and say, hey, so I have a different perspective on that. Would you like to hear it? I experience it a different way. I'd like to share it if you're open to it, rather than you're wrong. I don't do that. You just don't get me. It just doesn't work. It doesn't help us be more intimate and close in our relationships.
I like one thing that coaching has like made me realize is just watch if you're over identifying with, say, a diagnosis you have, or I'm just an introvert, or this has happened to me as a child, and so that's just how I am. Like once you recognize these sorts of things, I've had frustrations before, like, you're capable of choosing another path from now that you are aware. Like there's something called therapy, there's something called
Yes.
self-help books.
Right.
Like, yeah, it happened. And so for sure, there's a lot of understanding for why this might be default programming. It was adaptive. And so Terry Real does talk about a lot about the adaptive child. But then in adulthood, those same things that served you don't serve you anymore. And like, that's the next step. Like, it is an option if you would like to unpack some of that and heal, like that is available
Yeah.
if desired.
Yeah, I love the way she terms it. Jennifer Finlayson-Fife, also affectionately known as JFF. She calls it self-authorship, where you get to decide. You decide who you want to be. and step into that rather than blaming everyone else for your situation or your childhood or your diagnosis for the way you are.
And I think that's true too for when I was listening to that adaptive child and then, the mature adult. Adulting's hard, guys. We we are not undermining or like trying to like make excuses. Adulting is hard, but it's the change. What kind of this for me was that adaptive child was doing the best he could with primitive strategies because that prefrontal cortex is not fully developed. So there was not a choice at the time. Like it was very difficult. There's just not the ability to take a step back and like choose the next behavior, the next best thing with the tools that you had. It was really just a very primitive, very reactive, very, loaded in the limbic system. And then when you move into that mature adulthood, like now you kind of don't have an excuse, right? Like now you have a very fully developed prefrontal cortex. And that's how you've moved into the choice to now move into your mature adulthood is that, oh, okay, I can take a step back. Like get your power back, take ownership of that. Because in essence, once you're aware, you can recognize that awareness is like the first step to getting your power back. And then you have this beautiful, highly complex, wonderful region of your brain that you get the beautiful choice. And so now you get to choose. And I think looking from that perspective, it's super empowering to just be like, oh, okay, I don't have to blame or be the victim of my, families of origin or my terrible situation. Now I get to choose. I can, like you said, the authorship, I can write my story from here on out. I have the power to choose. I think that could be really beautiful and empowering.
Yeah. And I will add too that JFF says, I mean, this is a constant kind of back and forth where we regress, and it's normal. Like in the course of a day, we can definitely be playing the victim. The growth comes as we become more aware of it and we more consciously shift out of it. So these are not, all these losing strategies are not things that we grow completely out of, but being aware of them helps us to rewire a little bit and make them less the norm. And I mean, at the beginning, like this all made total sense to me. And I was just going, this is the way I behaved. And it does creep back in from time to time. But as we become more aware, then we can decide if that's the behavior we really want or if we want something more relational and more intimate.
All right. So the next losing strategy is blaming. And this is kind of where, tailing off of this playing the victim, because this is now shifting the responsibility for your problems, really, or even the problems of the relationship onto your partner. So this is that very safe external focus of control, minimally taking responsibility for what role you play and placing a lot of the responsibility on the external cause, more than likely it's your partner. It does prevent healthy conflict resolution. You can see why. If you are constantly shifting 99% of the blame on your partner and taking maybe 1%, that's not going to meet in the middle of anything, any road. And it really creates a hostile environment because that is dumping on to your partner a lot of the responsibility. So one of the strategies is to really, like we talked about, that self-awareness, that self-reflection. We said this, adulting is hard. There are days where you are going to want to blame. It's easier. You don't have the energy or the strength. You had a bad night of sleep, whatever. But just being aware and maybe recognizing like, yeah, I'm not really showing up my best self. Today is not the day to go into, talking about our budget for 2025 or something that might require a little more level headed. But also, when you engage into understanding, it actually forces you to share that responsibility, because just as you may interpret something that your partner is doing as controlling, manipulative, that may not be their full intent. It just may be how you're receiving it. And like sometimes being aware that you're just maybe not showing up your best self to even be able to process some of that. All of that hand in hand kind of helps to share responsibility. Like, hey, I was not showing up my best self. I think I misinterpreted a few things. Or even the partner coming to say, like, if you say something like, you're blaming me or I'm feeling victimized or whatever, the partner may come back and say, like, that was not my intent at all. So receiving the information as well as information giving, it's a two-way street. And so receiving information if you're not in the right headspace. And so that's why both Terry Real talks about this all the time, just almost asking permission, like, is this a venting episode? Do we need to solve a problem here? Can we just hold space for each other? The Gottman method has the stress reducing conversation. So it's 15 minutes at the end of the day, most days of the week, where you can just hold 15 minutes of space for a vent. May not be a problem solving, may not be a conflict resolution, may not be a compromise. It's just holding space. So any of these things that you decide in advance, and then some days you're just like, hey, I don't have the headspace for you to vent today or for us to majorly problem solve. The example here is you made me yell because of your behavior. So that's 100% giving your power away. So that's what we talk about. Like, no one else, we talk about this, Eleanor Roosevelt said this, like, no one can make you feel inferior, unless you give them permission to. And so, like, we extend it to, like, no one can make you feel anything without your permission. And so really deflecting and blaming that someone else is making you feel a certain way, it's actually not true. Administration can't make you feel terrible about being a doctor or whatever. Nobody has that power over you. So whenever there's a problem in their relationship, Michael immediately blames his partner, Jess, for not being supportive or understanding. He doesn't reflect on how his actions might have contributed to the issue. So the impact is Jess feels unfairly attacked and defensive all the time. This pattern of blame prevents any real resolution or personal growth. And Michael doesn't have to take responsibility. He doesn't have to self-reflect or be self-aware or share any responsibility. He can very comfortably just deflect responsibility 100% on the partner. But as you can see, that is a real intimacy hijacker. The next losing strategy is scorekeeping. Oh, we love this one a lot. Scorekeeping, yes, keeping track of every wrong or unmet need in the relationship and then using it as ammo. So this, as you can guess, leads to resentment. It really prevents forgiveness or progress because you're just constantly keeping score. Nobody wants that held over their head constantly. Nobody got time for that. So what they suggest is focusing on the present and mutual appreciation rather than tallying mistakes. The example, Jane keeps track of every time her partner Rob forgets to do something she asked for, like picking up groceries, calling her when he's running late. So during arguments, she brings up every single mistake he's made in the past. I love this scorekeeping, or we call it storytelling. We get to relive all the lovely stories. And she uses that as ammunition to win the fight. So what's the impact? Well, as you can guess, Rob feels constantly criticized as if he can never do anything right. Jane's scorekeeping creates an environment where past mistakes are never forgiven and the relationship becomes increasingly negative. And, I'd like to add a tactic to this too, is that gratitude, the gratitude journal. One of the things that our therapist tells us to do on the regular, and I think Dr. Daniel Amen talks about this all the time. When he goes to bed, one of the things that it makes his sleep that much better is if he writes down 3 things that he's grateful for. And our therapist wants us to write down 3 things we're grateful for our partner, like for that day. Sometimes 3 is hard to let go. I mean, especially if you had a rough day with your partner. 3 things are hard, but you usually can come with at least 1 or 2. And, that really does flip the script. That really does, that negativity bias that our brains are so helpful offering up all the time really does flip the script on that. And it also reduces anxiety and stress because you're like, oh yeah, they do something right on occasion. So you're like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, they did do this, they did do that. So you're less likely to scorekeep on the negative points and more likely to be like, okay, so they're kind of decent. That's fine. Well, I'll stay here. I'll choose to live with them a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to number 9 is emotional blackmail. And I'm already thinking about like 1,000 times that this has maybe happened that I'm aware of. Okay, so it's manipulating your partner's emotions to get what you want, often using guilt or threats to withdraw love. And what happens when you do that over and over again is it destroys emotional safety and trust. So the goal would be to advocate for open, honest communication that respects both partners' needs and boundaries. So the example that AI gives is during a disagreement about visiting family over the holidays, Rachel tells her husband, Jake, if you really loved me, you'd do this for me. She manipulates his emotions to get what she wants, making him feel guilty for not agreeing to her terms. The impact of this is that Jake feels manipulated and resentful, leading to feelings of emotional mistrust. And Rachel's emotional blackmail erodes the foundation of mutual respect and love in their relationship. I can think holidays is a great example. Can you imagine a family where the mom is like, it will just break my heart if you don't show up to our Thanksgiving? Or I feel like this is probably a pretty easy strategy for moms, is to go from the rational thing to, you don't want to, your mom is so sweet. Like, why would you want to do this to me? Or like, why don't you want to get the kids a puppy? Because don't you want them to feel loved? And I mean, like, oh my gosh. I think another example would be like, maybe you're going to go on a weekend with your friends or something, and your partner decides to, like 15 minutes before you leave, drop some sort of giant bomb that you could have talked about like the previous days or something like that, just so that it ruins what could have been a lovely experience. But like, they're doing it on purpose so that you're ruminating about whatever it is that, like, it's a manipulation thing on purpose to do that. It's just taking you from your prefrontal cortex to on purpose. Like, maybe, I mean, this would be something in sports too, where you smack talk to get your sports opposition to like go into their limbic system, to be like freaking out or so angry that they can't perform well. Any sort of, I'm just thinking like a billion different ways that you can use somebody's emotions against them to try to get what you want. It doesn't just have to be your partner.
Yep.
And then last one is stonewalling. And what we kind of decided the last time is withdrawing is where you're escaping. Stonewalling, you may stay there, but you have put up a barrier to emotional connection. So it's refusing to communicate or engage in the relationship, especially during a conflict, often as a way to avoid the discomfort. This one's kind of funny, but it happens in my relationship all the time. I'll be talking about, I like to plan. I am married to someone who is allergic to plans. And so I'll be bringing something up, like, I was thinking that this could be whatever. And the response that I will get that sends me into the stratosphere is, we'll see. No, just say no. I don't want to do that. The we'll see is so like, it's like refusing to like continue the conversation or resolve the conversation. It's just there's nothing I can really say that really resolves that. So it's a one-up position, like I can't really, like, okay, well, I guess we'll see. Stonewalling creates deep emotional distance and unresolved tension. It also leads to dreams of stabbing the partner.
Getting ready to confirm the homicidal thoughts.
Just kidding.
Hypothetically, if you're
If
homicidal,
something happens, we never had this conversation.
this recording will blow up.
Anywho, so what we're supposed to do is encourage openness and vulnerability, even when it's uncomfortable to say, hey, I really would rather not do that. Like, that would actually be a little more authentic and like make it where we could actually resolve the conversation. So during a series, this is the example that AI came up. Hopefully it doesn't lead to stabbing. So during a serious conversation about their future, when Maria brings up something difficult, her partner, Steve, shuts down completely. He avoids eye contact, stops speaking, and disengages from the conversation, hoping that she'll stop pressing the issue. Rather than saying, hey, I don't like this choice. I really don't think that this is what it's like just a way to, hopefully she will stop pressing it if he stonewalls enough. The impact of that is Maria feels ignored and rejected, and the lack of communication leaves important issues unresolved. Steve's stonewalling leads to frustration and emotional distance as Maria feels increasingly isolated in the relationship.
So it's not going to make the relationship better. When you're choosing to stonewall, you're pretty much, it's definitely a step in the wrong direction. So just as we wrap these 10 losing strategies up, a reminder that they are for us, not for us to identify in our partners. I mean, we can see them, but pointing them out to them is not going to go well or be helpful. And these strategies are natural. They're normal. They come probably from our biology. They come from our experience in our home of origin, what we saw growing up, and we most likely don't know any different. I certainly didn't before I started learning about this stuff, and it's okay. And we will regress into them sometimes. Even as we become aware of them, we will find ourselves reverting back to them, but we can look at them and know that we have a choice about how we want to show up. These happen in reaction to discomfort or perceived threats in our relationships. Really, they undermine our connection and intimacy. And we want to replace them with winning strategies. And we will do a separate podcast on winning strategies. Those are things like empathy, active listening, like really listening for understanding, even when it's painful. Honestly, I have to tell you that the winning strategies often don't feel good. Like they don't
Dang
feel
it.
comfortable. You have to really lean into a little bit of discomfort to be able to have growth in these relationships. Another winning strategy, taking responsibility for ourselves or personal accountability, and
Boo.
using good, yeah, I know, and using good conflict resolution skills, which we will also address in a later podcast.
So you're saying tantrums are out.
Dang it.
I mean, you can do you if you like the result you're getting. If you don't like the result you're getting, it might be good to level up a little bit and get some new skills. So just pay attention to all of our little scenarios that we talked about. These losing strategies universally do not increase intimacy or connection. They create conflict, emotional distance, and resentment. And when we recognize them and replace them with healthier strategies, we can foster deeper connection and intimacy, which is what we all thought we were getting, right? Didn't we think that we were getting that? And Cinderella made it look so easy. But it's work. It's work. And it's great work, though. It helps us grow into the best version of ourselves.
Yep, I love that. It takes intentionality. Intentionality is work. And some days you're going to have it and some days not. And that's okay. So know that we have grace for you. If you don't have grace for yourself, we are extending grace for you because some days it is tougher to muster that up than others. So take them to heart, be self aware, but just know that every day is not going to be a lovely self awareness. Oh, I'm ready to grow day. But we hope this has helped you, and we will always remind you to leave us a review, 5 out of 5 stars you would recommend, right? And write that review because it does help other doctors find us. It makes our ripple just that much bigger. So we're counting on you. And we want to tell you about our new free video, How to Crush Physician Burnout for Good Without Cutting Back Hours, Quitting Medicine, or Sucking It Up in Silence. Scroll down in the show notes and click the link and check it out today. So until next time, you are whole, you are a gift to medicine, and the work you do matters.